Hans Niemann's $100 million lawsuit gets dismissed in court. But that's not the full story. And I have a good friend who is a Harvard-trained lawyer who gave me a full breakdown and analysis of what actually is true and what's not true. Before I get into the analysis, let's do a quick recap of facts and events. Number 1, Hans Niemann has even admitted himself to cheating online as a kid multiple times. This was later confirmed by chess.com, and they showed the full extent of how much he has probably cheated, which was in hundreds of games. Number 2, Hans Niemann defeats Magnus Carlsen in Miami at a rapid online event. Yes, it was in Miami, so the players literally traveled to the same place and they would play online on the same physical stage. But it was still an online rapid game. Hans won, and afterwards he delivered the first edition of his infamous interview where he said, "Chess speaks for itself." Check it out.
Hans, yesterday was a terrible day for you, and today you start out with a masterpiece. How would you summarize it?
Chess speaks for itself.
Is it something special doing this against Magnus, Hans?
Then Hans beats Magnus again, but this time in the Sinkfield Cup in a classical over-the-board game. So this is classical chess, which means there's way more time on the board, and it's like physically over the chessboard. There's no online element, there's no computer involved. And when he does the post-game analysis, he says the same statement, "Chess speaks for itself," and he refuses to do any analysis. The very next day, Magnus Carlsen withdraws from the tournament, which is an unprecedented move, and basically insinuates that Hans is cheating because he says,
"If I speak, I am in big trouble."
Now, it's important to note that Hikaru and others start making content around this controversy and potential scandal, and that all leads to Hans Niemann filing his $100 million lawsuit with antitrust claims, defamation claims, and etc. Now we get to the dismissal. The court dismissed the antitrust claims with prejudice. I asked my friend, what the heck does that even mean? Well, the Harvard lawyer said that with prejudice means that it cannot be refiled. So basically, the decision to dismiss those antitrust claims are final. But the antitrust claims are just a part of the lawsuit. So let's go through that first, then we'll tackle the rest. For the antitrust claims, Hans was basically making two comments. One was that they boycotted Hans from being able to compete in competitive chess events, and that harmed the competitive chess market. Number 2, chess.com acquired Play Magnus Group to basically monopolize this competitive chess space. But the issue is that, number 1, Hans doesn't compete as a provider of competitive chess events. So the antitrust laws are about competition, not about individuals. And then number 2, the other issue is that Hans being excluded from competitive chess events does not gain market share for chess.com or Play Magnus Group. So for those reasons, the antitrust claims were just completely busted. So what about the rest of the claims? Hans could technically refile for defamation and damages in a state court or appeal the dismissal. However, as per the Harvard-trained lawyer's unofficial yet professional opinion, these takes are garbage. Hans has to prove that the defendants knew for a fact that Hans was not cheating or that they're being reckless in these claims. Reckless meaning that they had serious doubts, but they continued to say this anyway. And what about damages? You could certainly argue that there are damages done to Hans, but you may not win that argument. It would be a fight where Hans brings in experts who do economic forecasts, basically saying this is how much earnings that Hans likely missed out on, and Magnus would do the same, but Magnus's experts would say that the damages were tiny or just non-existent. And this is where I would speculate that maybe he would look at other chess prodigies who are up and coming and getting invites to closed events. So this would be like Norbert Abdusattorov, this would be Pragnananda, this would be Gukesh or Vincent Keimer. All those people are around the 2700 classical range, and Hans Niemann has been floating above and below the 27 range for quite a while now. So as a super GM who is relatively young, he probably would get invited to a lot of these events. But again, it's an argument that both sides would be making that to benefit their side of the case. And aside from winning that argument on damages, there are no damages if you don't prove defamation. Damages only follow if defamation is proved, and then the jury would vote on what damages seem appropriate based on the two sides' arguments. And just to sum it up, the Harvard lawyer said, "I don't think he has any real chance of winning." This may sound bleak for Hans or like a victory for Magnus and all the other defendants, but let's just take a step back and take a before and after approach. After this whole saga, you do see a lot of top-level tournaments having more airport-style security, ensuring that there are no electronic devices getting into the playing hall. Seems like a plus. But on the other side, you do have Hans that is basically being branded as uninvitable to closed events with potentially more prize money. If he truly has never cheated over the board, then that's a pretty tragic outcome. If he has cheated over the board, then it's justice. But we just have no way of knowing, and it's still happening anyway. So it's definitely a double-edged sword. But through it all, hopefully the game of chess can not only survive, but thrive and continue to evolve in terms of security measures and how to deal with cheating, especially with kids versus adults. Let me know what you think in this situation, if you think the chess boom is still healthy, still growing, and as always, happy learning, everyone.
So now I've noticed throughout social media, a lot of people who I once had respect for, who I once sort of looked up to, a lot of my heroes have decided to hop on this bandwagon. Now, there have been a lot of speculation, and there's been a lot of things said, and I think I'm the only one who knows the truth.